Welcome to the GRTV Indie Hour. We thought we'd do something a little special here at Gamescom because there are so many indie developers here, and we thought we'd invite a few of them to our booth and talk to them about their game and indie development in general and whatever else you can talk about with an indie developer. And it's going to be sort of a spontaneous sort of thing where people are going to drop in, drop out, and we're not quite sure. It's quite hard to get around Gamescom when the public is here, so you never know. Someone might be a little bit late, so we didn't want to schedule everything. It's going to be come as you are, and the first one to show up here is Klaus from Zoink Games, a studio that I've been following a little bit from afar for a while. You've been doing quite a lot of games, but now it feels like Stick It to the Man is really sort of the big coming out party for a lot of people to see you sort of come to your own.
No, definitely. No, definitely. Stick It to the Man is finally like everything is coming together the proper way. The team is perfect. The writers are perfect. The idea is perfect, you know, for us at least, you know. So it feels like finally we're getting like putting together the perfect band, you know. And now it's like we're rocking. It actually works, you know. So yeah, it's been amazing. Last year we've been developing. Now we're sort of finishing it up, and
it's a very sort of, it really feels like an indie title when you look at it, because it's so it's different than anything you've seen. Can you just tell us about the concept and the idea of it, first of all?
Yeah, I mean, basically, I always wanted to do a game about, I know there's been other titles out there, but really wanted to do a game that really is about mind reading, and it really is about diving into anybody's brain and actually hearing what they think about. I've always been into character design and characters that has sort of more deep details in it, and I thought, like, wow, if we actually could read about what everybody thinks, we could actually get much more information about them. Like, it's actually really interesting. Everybody would like to hear what somebody's thinking about somebody else, you know. So yeah, so it's a good art style. We really got a really good art style together that we tried out in the short movies before, and so we picked that together with the concept of mind reading and sort of a little bit of adventure gaming, but also a lot of platforming. So
it's a little bit like a puzzle platformer in a way. Yeah. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, it's a puzzle platformer, definitely. It's really about going around listening to everybody, what they think about, at the same time having challenges about taking yourself around an environment, because like our main character Ray is being chased by a lot of agents because there's a long story that he gets pulled into. It's kind of like at first you think like, wow, I got mind reading powers, but then you realize, shit, this is pretty bad, because, you know, it's kind of scary in a way. So actually our character Ray, he's kind of like a Woody Allen kind of character, so he gets kind of scared of it and wants, of course, to find out if he's actually going crazy, you know. So he tries to figure this out, and that one thing leads to another, and suddenly he pulls into murder and everything, you know.
Sounds like the game is really serious, but the art style sort of in contrast to that. Is that on purpose that you wanted a serious subject, or how do you treat it?
It's definitely not serious. It's just goofy. I love it. Yeah, I mean,
it sounded a little bit serious.
I mean, it's fun. I like all comedy. Comedy is always good when there's a bit of sadness to it, you know. It works a lot better with the contrast to have that, you know. And basically, like, we're working together with Ryan North, who is the writer on Adventure Time, which I worked with before, and we did an Adventure Time game last year. So I thought we'd pull him in, and it really helped a lot. It really built it up a lot better. I mean, he has this crazy dialogue. He just adds to our. I mean, we create the puzzles and we create the sort of the whole set of it, but he actually writes the dialogue, and it's just perfect for the mind reading part of it. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, it's serious, but the characters are really goofy, you know. Yeah.
So you've done games on mobile platforms and stuff like that, but how is it to sort of migrate onto PS Vita and PSN and with this game?
Well, I mean, I've actually been working with games for almost 20 years now. It's kind of sad in a way. But, you know, so I worked on Xbox, the first Xbox. So for us, it was interesting. But what's really been the big thing for us as a small developer is that Unity actually works. I'm not trying to sell Unity here, but for us it was just great to have like a camera. You pick it up and you start filming, you know, instead of having to, we have to develop an engine, blah, 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 you know. So we did mobile games before with Unity, and we just directly switched over to releasing it on PlayStation 3, and now we actually have it running on PS3, PS Vita, Xbox. It's just really quick. We don't really care about the technology, we care about the content, you know.
I guess that's really also opening up sort of consoles to indie developers more. by the technology that allows for that? Because perhaps you need a bigger team and more people back in the day to put it on console.
Yeah, definitely. Now you don't need a giant team. You know, you can actually do it with a small team because somebody else is solving that problem basically, and you're just concentrating on gameplay and gameplay programming instead of engine coding. You know, yeah.
So some indie developers go down the self-publishing route, but you do have a publisher for Stick It to the Man. Can you tell us a little bit about that relationship with Ripstone?
Well, Ripstone is basically two guys from Sony, and they used to do Little Big Planet. Really great guys, actually. First publisher that I actually like to work with. And basically the game is just, you know, it's just so big that we couldn't actually afford it to develop it all on our own. So, and we kind of tried, we wanted to finish it off pretty quickly. We didn't want to work on it for many years. So we kind of needed the money, and they were also supporting us for everything else. I'm not really good at selling the company or selling so we needed these to do a certain amount of marketing, of course, you know. So yeah, they've been a really great partner.
So I guess that is something that is always going to be a challenge, because the creatives, the most important thing when you're an indie is to be creative and create the game. But if you don't get it out there, you don't get your audience, it's kind of difficult. And today there's a lot of new avenues as well to explore. There's crowdfunding, and it feels like there's more options available for you as an indie.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, because we actually had a fully Kickstarter campaign for the game, finished up, and it was ready to go. I even made a super nice video and everything. But then it was like, okay, well, Ripstone, they help us now. Okay, we'll just go that way then, you know. But I think in the future we'll probably try that, you know. But the thing with Kickstarter and those ways is that you kind of need to have a name, and I still don't have that, you know.
You got to have the nostalgia factor, I think, as well.
Too, yeah, exactly, yeah. So
if you're trying something new, it could be difficult.
Yeah, exactly. And our game is a little bit hard to explain, but once you play it, it's actually really interesting, you know. Yeah.
Right, so I think we're being joined by another indie developer here, another Swede. You may have seen him before on GRTV. I think you've been once or twice on GRTV.
Yeah, I think we met like every event we are at. We always tend to bump into each other.
Too bad, but so we were talking about how the indie scene has sort of changed, and what prospects there are now with all the crowdfunding, and that also console manufacturers are opening up more to indies and inviting them, and of course you're being published by Sony now, which is sort of an indication of that. Could you? I mean, you got a different background than Klaus, who was along with in the olden days, UDS and all of that stuff, and back in the day. So, but you're coming from more of the student background and then starting your own company. How have the last sort of 3, 4, 5 years been as an indie?
Yeah, that's a really difficult question. Since our transition from indie, like we're really indie, just cup noodles, sandwiches with Swedish caviar, which is really crappy caviar for all of you out there.
Not caviar for any other people than the Swedes.
Right, and I've heard this thing about that you can't export or import caviar into Russia in any way you like, except for Swedish one, because they think it's crap. And those Russians, they know their caviar. Anywho, yeah, well, we went from that sort of like that really indie feel. We basically ran out of all of our personal savings, just kept working anyways, sort of got some money by like getting into the incubator program at the university, which we dropped out of by recommendation from our dean. So it was sort of like a really indie start. But then we sort of got signed halfway through that indie thing, since we basically had no money at all. I mean, usually those people that go indie, they've previously done something so they can support them while they're developing their game. We didn't have that, or we were too stupid to save money before that. And then we made the transition to make Magica, and that went really well with Paradox, and it was a very fruitful relationship. And after that, well, we started looking around, looking for which other companies can be sort of provide that sort of indie feel, even though we're not strictly indie, because I don't like to call us indie, because that's sort of that doesn't give enough creds to the guys that are really indie. Like, you know, at the Unity booth. Have you been by that?
Not yet, no, actually I don't know. But you're right, I understand what you mean basically. There's some guys who are really struggling to make by themselves totally, you know, and that's maybe even more true indie. Yeah.
It is an interesting point because independent doesn't necessarily mean small.
Yeah.
I mean, it's, as long as you're sort of your own company and you make your own decisions, I think you are independent. So, but of course, what everyone thinks of with an indie is this one guy who's sitting in his bedroom
exactly,
and coding himself. But
so it's a gray limit, I guess.
yes.
And when somebody asks, I can say that we're an independent studio, because that we are, but because we're not owned by anyone, the entire company is owned by people that work at the company, so we create sort of our own destiny together. But we're not in, if somebody asks if we're in there, I hesitate to answer yes, because I don't want to credit the guys that are really doing that, like the bohemian, hardcore, artsy kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. No, I agree. Yeah, it's true. I gotta run actually. I was talking to a guy over there, so I'll let you catch up and continue. Okay.
All right.
Yeah,
Nice to meet you. All right. So I guess we'll talk a little bit about your games or game. What are you developing? 2 games now? I heard something about that.
Yeah, and I can't go into detail about the other one, but it's a really exciting project. But the one we announced now at Gamescom, Helldivers, is sort of in a way a spiritual successor to Magicka. In a way, but then again, all our games are probably going to be that, because we sort of found our niche and we know how to do that. We know how to do the humor, we know how to do the co-op, we know how to do, yeah, that's it. That's the only thing that we know how to do.
I think one part of being an indie as well is never to do a game with a 2 in the title.
Yeah, that might have something to do with it, and people have been cheering for Magicka 2, but that's something that, well, maybe. But,
Someday.
Yeah, but we want to, all the time, we really want to just keep on doing new things and explore new segments. And I mean, if we find something that's really interesting, we might do more of it. But I think that's sort of like the indie or the independent scene is usually defined as the sort of the freedom attached to it. And that's something that we are always looking for in partners that we work with. Like how independent can we be while we're developing? How many crazy ideas can we put into the game? And how much resistance are we going to encounter? And I mean, of course there's going to be some kind of resistance. There's always a resistance in any kind of cooperative thing that you're doing with anybody. Even if you're playing a game, developing a game, or doing business. It's all of the same, like when you interact with people, there needs to be some kind of friction that creates the best kind of product. And so the partners that we're looking for tend to have that sort of creative focus and have that passion for games, and they don't want to target a wide audience, like the huge audience. Instead, we want to focus on a core group of gamers that we really enjoy, like the kind of games that we do. And it's like we have a studio motto, which is a game for everyone is a game for no one.
Very true.
Yeah, and it is, and that's the way we actually found our way to Sony now, or especially to the Foster City Studios, since those guys were totally open. They've, I mean, Sony looking at Journey and Flower and so forth. They got that. They're starting to get the indie thing, and they're really enthusiastic about it. I was at a presentation yesterday at the sort of Sony indie press presentation, and one of the guys there said that what the indie scene is today is the big AAA titles of tomorrow. So the sort of indie is really necessary because it lays the foundation of what's fun about games. And there are certain indie games that will make emerge into larger products and make brands and stuff like that, like the classical AAA games that we all play, that we like. But when from time to time we want to try out those kind of quirky small games that have something special, something extra that people fall in love with.
I think it's almost like the publishers had to reset their minds a little bit, because they had that sort of bigger is better motto. But the AAA production got to such a point where you really had to have like a 5 million hit in order to be profitable. Yeah. And now they're sort of rethinking that a little bit. If we put our eggs in different baskets, smaller projects, more in, because I think Sony, for instance, They said they have 50 developers that they're working with. Only 14 are internal, the rest are external, and a lot of them very small. So it feels like that the whole landscape is shifting a little bit to more of a, there's more diversity there.
Yeah, but as Sony stated before, like Naughty Dog, they were 7 people when they started the company. So Sony has had that sort of tradition now of approaching indie studios and made them grow. But what's different now is that indie studios, sometimes they don't want to grow. Like for us, for instance, I mean, we're not aiming to become a 300 people studio. We want to keep that kind of core group of gamers, and I sincerely hope like that Helldivers will be a well-received game, and that we can keep on doing what we love, making quirky, smaller titles that we enjoy playing a lot, and I hope that the players will as well.
I mean, it's almost from the beginning when I started meeting up with you at different events, you've always sort of been dying to have, you have always had these many ideas, and it's sort of like you don't want to do too big a games because then you can't sort of realize all the other ideas that you got right in the studio. I mean, it's a little bit of a waste when you spend like 3 years on one big game and that's all you do.
Yeah, and it's a tricky thing as well, because I mean, every time you one sort of dreams about doing like these really big titles. I mean, it would be super awesome to do this awesome production, but a lot of the spirit sort of gets lost in a way, at least from my perspective. And I don't know if it's true, because I know a lot of people in AAA industry which are really passionate about what they do. But it sort of becomes everybody sort of gets a narrower focus, and it becomes like you need to be a specialist in that sort of field. Like our artists, we're like less than 5 artists per project, and each of these guys, they can go like, well, I made 20% of this game. All of the art that you see is basically, I've touched all of it, and which is a really nice thing, in my opinion. I mean, there are a lot of people that think different things, but I couldn't see myself sitting in a big studio modeling trash cans all day for a 3-year project.
Someone has to do the trash cans, right?
Yeah, somebody has. And I know, I've heard of guys that are really into, like, there was this guy, I can't remember which company he worked on, that was really into modeling phone booths and telephones and stuff like that. And it was basically a hit.
They're basically extinct now, the phone booths. So what is he going to do?
I don't know. Maybe he can do historical games.
All right, so I noticed we've got another indie developer that you want to come in here? Brian from...
Image and Form, yeah. How do you do?
And you were...
No, we haven't met.
I'm Johan from Iran.
Oh, nice to meet you. Right.
So we've got a couple of Swedish indies again. Again, yes.
For some reason we always stand up with Swedes.
Yes. And we all speak perfect English, right?
Yeah, we're so good. We're so good.
Anybody care for a snooze?
I didn't smuggle any here, so...
I did.
Oh, you got a problem then. Yeah. So, Brian, of course, very different situation from Johan. You were just announced the game here at Gamescom, and you just released one right before Gamescom, and you're wearing your game, basically.
Yeah, I'm wearing my game. So we released August 7 in Europe and Australia, our new game, SteamWorld Dig. And the day after that in the US, so it came out August 8 in the US. We had a tremendous reception. Nintendo really rose to the occasion. They decided to put us on the Direct Connect, the video broadcast. And so we were just biting our fingernails while that video was playing. And as an indie, it's just fantastic to get the head of Nintendo Europe actually plugging your own game.
Because I mean, with Microsoft and Sony sort of battling it out, Nintendo have been flying a little bit under the radar, but from indies I hear a lot of good things about what Nintendo are now doing with their indie efforts.
Yeah, I mean, from our perspective, they've really been with us and really supported us the whole time. I mean, traditionally we're an iOS developer, and I'm not going to say anything bad about Apple, but Nintendo has been fantastic in the way that they always get right back at you with emails and so on. I think it's really worthwhile for indies to check out Nintendo because It's a tricky process to become a Nintendo developer, but anyone can become one. And once you're on the inside, they're all love. They're just fantastic.
We've had the same experience with Sony as well.
Yeah?
And I think that there is, as you said earlier, there's a sort of a revolution going on where sort of the castle walls of the big publisher castle is being torn down or opened up, and it's becoming more like a city where people can enter and leave, and they can have a nice conversation with the ones that control that huge fortress.
Right.
And I don't know if you had the same experience with that. I mean, everyone that I've met on the inside of Sony, and also, I mean, at Paradox, everyone's really, really friendly, and there's like this huge passion and love for making games, which might not shine through sort of the corporate structure.
I'd say that's exactly it. A couple of years ago, we released the first game in the SteamWorld series, and at that point, we were just too intimidated to actually talk to Nintendo. I mean, we became a authorized developer and publisher, but we're just so afraid that they would be pissed off when we sent them emails. So now a couple of years down the road, we just realized they're just great guys, and I think like Sony, they're really anxious to get indies to develop for the platforms. And I think it's a great thing because both the Sony and the Nintendo and the Xbox audience, they're gamers. Mobile users they don't have to be gamers by default. So here, I mean, people are really paying attention to your game. They're reading reviews and they're coming back to us with questions, and then they go and buy the game. And I think that's great.
But it must be said that Anthill was kind of a core, if you will, a core title on iOS. So you can do that as well and reach success as well.
Well, yeah, I mean, you can really be successful on iOS. And like I said, I'm not going to say anything negative about Apple because we're going back to iOS at one point. But I think with so many developers flocking to mobile, it becomes like a lottery almost. It's if you have a hit and Apple decides to feature it, great for you. 99% are not going to get featured, and the release is going to fly under the radar. It's going to be really tough.
But I mean, it feels like the iOS and the Google Play story are more like, well, as they indicate, marketplaces, and the publishers have become more like a family kind of thing that they bring you under their wing and they take you in and they're like, well, here, have some candy and we'll feed you and do all of that. In a way.
Maybe it's like that.
You're self-published, so it's a little bit of a different role. You're self-published, so it's a different...
It is a bit different. I mean, we came in at a point in time with Anthill in late 2011 when it was still pretty open that way. I felt that we self-published that and we got featured by Apple, I think solely because of the merits of the game. The game was... They looked at it and they thought it was awesome, and they just decided to feature it. Maybe it's more difficult today when games are largely free to play, and it's hard for small developers like ourselves to have the know-how how to not create games, but instead create shops where people should enter and pay at the right time, and so on.
And then there's this whole sort of marketing thing where you got to get visibility before, so that Apple they measure like how the public awareness is as well, and then you get an easier time on it. So it's a whole sort of, you have to work the system to get there.
But at the same time, I think that it's still very, very simple to publish for iOS. The entry level, the cost is not that high. So if you have a great idea, then go for it. Just go. But if you have an even greater idea, then you talk to another platform as well, because, like I said, the players on iOS and Android, it's very much the flavor of the day that sort of decides whether you're going to get the game or not.
It's very fickle.
Yeah, it's very fickle. Yeah. And whereas on Sony and Nintendo and XBLA, you have gamers who sit there and they want a good game.
And I've like one of the things that I've like one of the most appreciating things that I've had now when we sort of got into the industry, and we had the same experience that you spoke of earlier. We were too afraid, even after Magica was released. We're like, well, we can't contact any of the big guys yet. They're gonna crush us. They're gonna laugh at us, and then they're gonna like squish us under their booth. But that wasn't the case. I mean, they were really kind of, and which was a big surprise actually. But something that really like makes the difference is like at the Sony press conference when we were announced on the big screen. I mean, sitting in the audience, looking at that, your game up there right next to all of the other like great titles by huge developers, and you're sort of getting the same amount of space as they do. I mean, that's just a fantastic opportunity, and it just warms my heart. It's at that time, like that moment, I was like, maybe we're a real developer after all.
You were sort of secretly like fearing that, oh, maybe they pull our bit. Maybe they're not gonna do that.
Yeah.
Maybe they're gonna show Gran Turismo 6 for 5 more minutes, or
yeah, something like that. I don't know. I wasn't really worried about it, but it felt so unreal. It felt so unachievable. But I mean, to every indie developer out there, or people that are thinking about getting into the games industry, I mean, now is the best time to do it. I mean, you can just, if you got the skills or know-how, or even if you don't, I mean, there's Unity and there's a lot of great tools out there to just get into it. And I mean, if you love games and you are creative and you have this drive and this passion, instead of sitting at home and just playing games, you could as well start making them. And it's a really worthwhile endeavor. And even if you don't go commercial with it, I believe that it's one of the best hobbies that you can have.
I think that's a great way to put it. And it's like, what if everybody knew how to write music, for example? I mean, imagine all the amazing music we would have in the world. I mean, it's sort of set aside for a few chosen ones that can study music and write compositions and rock songs and what have you. But a lot of the people don't have the tools to do it. Like you say, I think it's just now is the time to get into making games. The tools are there. The big platform owners are really opening up. So just go for it. Just do it.
There's so many ways to get into it. You could start modding games, or you could, try out any of the tools, or you could go into games that actually are about creating games. I mean, I know a lot of level designers that got hired after doing Little Big Planet levels, stuff like that. It's more open to that sort of thing, but at the same time, I guess a good foundation. Getting to learn the know-how is also important. Everyone can't be self-learned, I guess.
Please go ahead. Okay. Yeah, and I mean, there are so many different aspects of games development. I talked to a couple of indie devs, and usually the story is there's a guy that knows how to draw. He draws really well, and he meets up with somebody that knows how to program, and so for some reason. And those two guys, that's all you need, basically. Like, if you have that, you can create a game. And there are some people that are, I mean, even more skilled than that. They have the double discipline of doing both things at the same time. And kudos to them. But I mean, one of the charms of developing games, in my opinion, is that relationship to the other developer, because that's where things really come together, when you're sort of in it together and you're crunching. I mean, I'm not saying you should crunch, but that usually happens when you're really passionate about things. You go out for dinner and you go back to the office or to your living room or wherever you're developing, and you just go for it. And that feeling is one of the greatest in the world, in my opinion.
Right. And yeah, now is the time. Just get in. And I'd also say that playing games can be a little bit destructive if you play too much. I mean, it's not good for you, obviously. But the step from playing games to making games doesn't have to be that big. Because if you play a lot of games, then you are opinionated about games. You really think that, oh, this should be like that, or they should make a game like this. It's like, just make it yourself. The tools are there now. You don't have to be a genius. Or I think that might be like, it might be a hurdle for a lot of people. You think, yeah, but it must be so difficult to make games. It's like, yes, But if you never start, if you never start playing the electric guitar, you're never going to become...
Right, the greatest journey starts with one single step.
Yeah, and that step it'll be surprisingly simple steps that you take in the beginning.
And that's interesting because your company didn't start out making games in the beginning, right?
No, it was just porn sites in the beginning. No, it was actually... We started out in multimedia a very long time ago, in the 90s. Then we moved into web development and all that stuff.
During the boom.
During the boom. But since we were doing multimedia in the 90s, it's very close to what we today call gamification. It's just, it didn't have that name at that point. So I guess we always had the idea that making games for us isn't going to be that different. So we started making kids games in 2004, and then we did that up until 2009. And then we got into, then we were so creatively starved that we really had to change. Or we were making a lot of money from work for hire, but in 2009 we decided that we have to do our own stuff. We have so many ideas, and if we don't do it now, when are we going to do it? And so...
Otherwise you're just sitting here doing work for the next check all the time.
Yeah, exactly. It's not really progressing. You're paying for... You're getting the rent paid, but it doesn't give you the freedom to actually work with your own ideas. And I'm not telling anyone that they should just quit doing work for hire. It can be a very good balance there, that you do some work for hire and then you, in the meantime, work on your own great ideas. But then we got into iOS and we made a couple of not so great games, and then we made this game called Anthill, which is actually a great game. And that sort of gave us the confidence to say to ourselves that we can do this. Let's not make a lot of work for hire. Let's really try.
I'm gonna leave you guys. I need to go back. It's great meeting you.
Yeah. Always a pleasure.
And we'll probably bump into each other.
I'm afraid so. Yes.
Down the road.
All right. So Johan left us, but you're still here.
Great.
Let's move back to the game that you just released, SteamWorld Dig. I spent a weekend digging around and playing through the game, and it was a lot of fun. It's one of those games that sort of, it's just so addictive in its nature. You just can't, because you have to find what's behind that next thing all the time. It's like, well, I mean, it's really a gamer's game, isn't it?
Yeah, it is a gamer's game. And we see it also, I mean, I don't have any stats on the demographics, but I can tell that this game it really speaks to people who are influenced by, or who love classic games, like Metroidvania type of games, Spelunky, Dig Dug, what have you.
I was actually, one of the first games I played as a kid was a Dig Dug clone called Digger.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. I still remember that was on the music, and I was playing it at my father's job, so it sort of I mean, it's a very different mechanic and all that, but you're still digging out dirt. Yeah. So,
I mean, any kind of game that involves digging we will always be we will be told by people that we are influenced by a lot of different games, but the truth is we are. I mean, we have set out to make a classic game, and I don't think you can make classical music without listening to the great masters. So
you don't have to invent your own instrument to make.
No, exactly. I think Mojang, when they made Minecraft, I thought it was, and also when Terraria came, I think those games are just achievements. They are fantastic creations. SteamWorld Dig is not a game like that. It's not a sandbox game, but I think that we really have a classic game as well.
I think that was only like the thing that I would have liked. I would have liked to have a little bit of randomized things to sort of, so there would be even more of an exploration throughout the game.
Well, maybe that's coming.
Well, there's always DLC and sequels and all that's the good.
Right. Yeah. Well, we're talking.
You are thinking of SteamWorld as a universe and a franchise that you will return to, because this is the second game.
Yeah, most definitely. Right now, we think that with the reception that we've been getting, SteamWorld is definitely a franchise, and we're going to do new installments in the game, or in that series. I think that the next few games are not... The next game, I think everybody is expecting a direct sequel to SteamWorld Dig. I'm not sure that that's exactly what we're going to do. I think we're going to surprise a few people. But I think the future is going to be great for SteamWorld. Yeah.
It is a lovely universe. It's not just about the digging mechanics and that stuff. It's
That's true. SteamWorld Dig is about digging. I think SteamWorld... I mean, if the makers of Call of Duty would tell the audience that, you know, the next Call of Duty game is actually going to be a tower defense game, then it wouldn't be... They can't do that. But we can, because the first SteamWorld game, SteamWorld, which was a tower defense game, it was very different from SteamWorld Dig, and that sort of lends us the freedom to do a lot of different types of game genres within that story.
any you'd like to drop? Any?
Yeah, I'd like to drop it, but the guys at the office have told me not to drop it yet, so I'm sorry, you gotta wait a little bit longer.
So, speaking of that, I mean, we talked a lot about sort of the relationship with Nintendo and how what you're going there, but what kind of I mean, you're a success story. You got to #1 on that. Can you give us any idea of sort of how big is the marketplace on eShop? Because it's kind of hard to gauge for us.
That's a very good question, and I'm not sure really if I'm at liberty to just give you exact figures, but
you better not risk that.
Right, so I'm not going to do that. But I tell you that it's surprisingly big, and I think that we will be in a very comfortable spot. And I also think that it's not like iOS where you have 72 hours to sort of make and break or make your game pay for itself. I think we are actually looking at a quite sweet long tail for this game. So it feels like it's just more even, and people on the eShop or 3DS customers, they will tell you if the game is bad, and they will tell each other. On the contrary, they will tell each other when a game is good. So I've been getting a lot of love here at Gamescom, where people are coming up just seeing the T-shirt and saying, you know, a friend of mine told me about this game, and I got it. I read up on it, and then I got it. So it feels much more like a gamer's community than shouting into the void that is the App Store. It's again, I don't want to say anything bad about Apple, because they have created a fantastic opportunity for a lot of developers. But the Nintendo community it's awesome. For us, to get this sort of reception is something that we never dreamed about.
It also sets up the future a little bit differently, because I have to admit, like before SteamWorld Dig, of course I knew about you, but I didn't know much about SteamWorld Dig until maybe a month out from release or something like that. So now the next time maybe you'll have a bit of a longer sort of wind up until release.
Exactly, we'll have that. And we'll also have a better strategy for our release. I mean, right, it's been like, someone made the analogy of like you have a lot of great soccer players on a field, and then from left field comes Super Mac just barging in and knocking everybody over. It's nobody's fault but mine, actually. The guys had made a great game. I knew that. It was just, I was at a loss how to do the PR and marketing for the game. Luckily, we got a lot of help from a lot of people. And again, the Nintendo community is awesome in that respect. Yeah.
I think we got another indie developer who's coming by here. Oh, you two know each other already.
Yeah, we're like this.
Sure.
Right, so Diana from
Knap.
That's how we pronounce it. Stopping by here, and of course it's two Nintendo. You're both on Nintendo platforms.
Yes. So we've been like the Nintendo platform since the WiiWare. We were like trying out that kind of almost dead platform at a time with a little hobby project. But yeah, recently just, or like last week, just released a Wii U game called Spin the Bottle, Bumpy's Party, a crazy party game.
It's almost not a video game. It's more like a social game.
Well, it is actually meant to take you in a different kind of setup, like this party setup where you're not staring at a screen somewhere, but you're actually looking at the players you're playing with. And hopefully it gets you very close and relaxed. And if I can say from our playtests and what I've seen and what the people are writing that have played the game, is that it really gets you close. It definitely brought the office, I mean the people in our office, we already kind of were really close because we're developing these games and we are dropping V-modes and dance with each other every day. But actually the guys in the game house in Copenhagen where our office is, one of the companies, we kept inviting them. And they became like our best friends now, is it because we used to play Spin the Bottle during the playtest every Friday almost. So now we are like good buddies and going out together.
I've tried Spin the Bottle, and it's exactly what you expect from these guys. It's crazy and it's very different and totally adorable. You should get a Spin the Bottle. Yeah.
It's the Wii U killer app, right?
Totally. That was the idea. I hope it's right.
Of course, you mentioned it's something we expect from you guys because you come up with some crazy ideas. And I guess that's sort of the spirit of indie, that you're not tied down by having to sort of conform to anything that's out there already.
Definitely. And you know, when you pitch this game to a publisher, which I also try always for fun, say like, what do you think about this? They look at you and they're like, oh, this is interesting. It's like, it's very unconventional and people don't really get it. Is this really a game and how does it work? And you know, there's all these questions. So I always say like, no, I'm not talking to publishers anymore. Like, you know, when you look at a game, you know, you should like, if you look at your game and say like, yeah, this is something like, I don't know, something out there that makes a lot of money. And that means publisher will look at it probably. But for us, it's like we're not even thinking about it. It's like we know our game is not acceptable for publishers. It's like they don't know if they can earn any money. But
we're talking a little bit how the publisher point of view is changing a little bit, opening up. Perhaps not to such crazy ideas yet, but do you think there will be a day when these kind of ideas will find a home with publishers?
I think slowly, yes, but I also think the publishing in general has to change because they expect to earn a lot of money back. And I think now with many platforms and, you know, I think games will not earn as much money as it used to be, like big hits, millions. So I think our publishers have to think another way. And that's why I think Devolver, they're doing really well because it's like they're actually a very alternative publisher and they have very low costs and they spend a lot of money in the right places. So these kind of publishers will pop out more and more, I'm sure about that. But
we're talking to, in the beginning of the show, we were talking to Klaus, who's published by Ripstone, which is also similar to Devolver.
Yes, exactly. So Ripstone is a very good example. But I have to say, I mean, we are self-publishing like now for at least three titles. And it just gets better and better. You get like more experience of how to approach the press, and you have more experience of how to show your game. And so I would have to say that we are learning also how to become really a publisher for at least our own games, if not else. And in that, we are actually collaborating with Niflas and like publishing a game together. That's our next like Wii U game, or hopefully other platforms as well. So as you can see, it's like I think now we're also in a time where if you're a bigger studio and if you can hire some good people in, they can actually help with exactly publishing, and you can really do it yourself.
So is that what you've done? Hired a lot of new people, or
sorry?
Is that what you've done? Hired a lot of people? And
I got to say that Image and Form, as we have been sort of 5, 6, 7 people, and now there's 11 of us. It's like. It's still just, it's very much like you guys, I think. It's Image and Form is a family. Most of us, we've been working for so long together that if one of the guys or girls would quit, it would just be sorrow. It would be very sad. So we really, really, really want to continue doing this. It's like you guys. I mean, you're crazy, but you're the same as us.
Yeah, definitely. It's the same feeling. We have a core team of 8 people that now I'm expanding a little bit, so we're probably going to end up 10, 11, and I would like to keep this team and know each other hopefully forever.
I got to go, guys.
Thank you very much.
Good to see you.
And I'll see you.
Cheers.
Right, so now we're alone.
Yes, so what else would you like to know?
What's next for Knapnock?
Well, I mentioned a little bit. So we are actually working with Nicholas, and we're going to try to bring a game together where he's like very atmospheric puzzles, and then like we would like to
Of Knit fame.
Yeah, Knut fame. Yeah. So he wants to do something slightly different, not to be exactly only him and his games. So he really. And I think we have a very good energy together. He was working in our office even before he started working with us. So, you know, we had some beers one day after playing Spin the Bottle, and then we talked about the VU, because we talked about the VU in a very different way than like money making. It was just like, wow, this is like a great controller, you know, this is a great setup. So we were discussing like, oh, you can do all these different games that you can't do with other consoles right now. So we started like discussing some game ideas, and Nicholas came up with this wonderful idea where you know, like work. You have a spaceship, and you have to like control it with also on the screen of the gamepad. You have to turn on and off some of the features of the. Nice.
Smurfs.
Yeah. So the thing is that he was like, wow, this is really a game that will work specifically for this, and then we were like, why don't we make it?
Space games are always fun.
Yeah. It's like, yeah, so we've been making this space adventure game, like, we don't even know what is yet. Like, this is like the first month we actually got the team to work together with Nicholas and see if something will be coming out from this, and it actually will. So it's looking really interesting. It's very early to show anything. It's been just a month of like really development, but hopefully like in a month we should be able to show something and say like, wow, we're proud to make a game together. And like explore adding some multiplayer, like a layer to his games. So let's see what happens if we're gonna succeed.
I don't dare.
How crazy it's gonna be now.
That's my question. Is it gonna be a typical crazy game, or because it sounds a little bit suspiciously like a video game?
Yeah, actually, it is gonna be a video game. I think it's definitely not gonna. It's gonna resemble more his style than our style. Because definitely, even though the art style is very much our job now, the thing is that the creative vision will be him, and the puzzles and the sound, it will definitely be him. So I think it's going to be very much a Nicholas game, but we'll try to really spice it up. So I don't know how much is possible. You know, that's why we're here. We would love to experiment. Let's see. Maybe it's going to be all failures, so it's going to be completely Nicholas game, but you know, at least we'll support him to the end and get.
Yes, I guess whatever it turns out to be, it's also an experience and a learning process for both parties to learn from each other.
I mean, definitely, the learning process is one thing. I mean, he works very differently, but we somehow work very well together. It's been a good first month. He's very fast. In my office, we are a bit more, you know. I wouldn't say slow, but our games have always been about so much prototyping. You don't just build like a bunch of puzzles and it feels like a lot in the end of the day. It's always been like, oh, you're throwing controllers around and like, you're just, in the end of the day, you have a big mess. Like literally mess of controllers. That's usually the end of the day. You feel like you've done nothing. But so it's going to be a very interesting like a collaboration, I think. But besides that, I think Nicholas has been in a position where like he really wanted to work with someone. He's been alone up north making games himself, and he's really happy to like be in Copenhagen and make games with us. And we are as well. And I think if it succeeds, he might like continue doing this. Maybe not only with us, but with others. But also for us, is definitely we would love to do this with more indies if possible. I mean, I think there is something about the leverage that we can do together. I think first of all, a bit more interesting games because we have different profiles, right? But another thing is that we can leverage on each other's previous work and like really show, you know, that we are both like interesting profiles making something new. So I don't know. We'll see.
Sounds very, very exciting, and perhaps it's also a way for you to open up to an even bigger crowd of gamers to enjoy your games, because once you get onto one game from an indie developer, you tend to sort of look up what have they done before, and you look forward to the next game they're doing as well.
Yeah, we're definitely looking forward to that period, like where we actually get more games in the portfolio, and exactly like you say, we interest people that are not interested in something like Spin the Bottle to maybe check it out because they liked, I don't know, our spaceship game that is coming out in a year or two, and probably a year. No, not 2 years.
Don't promise anything.
No, I don't want a game that I'd release in 2 years. We have also almost a rule like, no, it's okay if it comes out in 2 years, but we work on it max 1 year. No.
The rest of the time is just throwing controllers.
Yeah, it's like, exactly. It's also boring to work on one game for many years. You know, we like the experimentation. We want to move on, like make a bit, like narrow down the scope from the beginning. Don't like make the next, I don't know, longest game.
I think that's a perfect way to end this hour of indies.
Yes, let's not get too long.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you too.
Goodbye.
And great to be here.
All right, and goodbye, all the viewers. Thanks for watching us, and well, we'll have more from Gamescom over the coming weeks, so enjoy watching that.